We get a lot of questions from people about upgrading from their broadband provider's routers, because at the moment, a lot of default ISP routers just aren't very good. But is doing this a good idea? And what exactly is involved in upgrading your router? To find out, we bought a new router for our EE broadband connection, and things really didn't go how we expected. But before we begin, if you're looking for a new broadband deal with a good Wi-Fi router, click the link in the description to our broadband deals guide to get an idea of some of the best offers on the market at the moment and to learn about the routers they each offer. Before we get into what happened, let's go over what we were trying to achieve and why you might like to upgrade from your broadband provider's router. There are two main reasons you might like to change away from your broadband provider's router. The first is, a lot of broadband providers are still shipping routers with an outdated Wi-Fi standard. For example, BT is still shipping the Smart Hub 2 on all of their broadband deals, which only comes with Wi-Fi 5, and from our testing, on its own, really doesn't provide good Wi-Fi signal at all. And it's the same story with PlusNet, as well as Sky Broadband, although you can pay them to upgrade to a better router, and a number of other providers as well. With a third-party router, you'll likely be able to get Wi-Fi 7 for less than £200, and Wi-Fi 6 options are a lot cheaper than this as well. For us though, we're using the EE Smart Hub Plus, which already comes with Wi-Fi 6, and in our opinion, offers pretty good Wi-Fi signal. We can get online throughout a 2-story, 4-bedroom house, including with brick internal walls, with no mesh Wi-Fi systems, and no issues at all. The main reason we wanted to upgrade, and the other reason you might be doing this, is a lot of ISP routers, especially from BT and EE, are very restricted when it comes to the settings on offer. For us, the big one was a lack of custom DNS. We had to go and do this on a device-by-device basis, which takes ages, but you'll often find other settings are restricted as well, and with a third-party router, there will just generally be a lot more customization you can do. So this is the router we chose to buy, mostly because we really like TP-Link's settings and customization options in the back end, but we also thought we'd try out Wi-Fi 7 to see if we get faster speeds over Wi-Fi with this router compared to the Smart Hub Plus. We do have a few Wi-Fi 7 compatible devices, so we thought if we were going to make the change, we might as well try Wi-Fi 7 while we're at it. The other good thing about this router is the number of 2.5 gig Ethernet ports it has. This isn't particularly useful for our use case, but it might be for you. If you want to pick up this router yourself, or see what prices TP-Link are offering on it at the moment, click the link in the description to amazon.co.uk to see the latest deals. The first step was to plug the router into our Openreach ONT box and unplugging the Smart Hub Plus as we did this. BT and EE routers don't come with bridge mode, so supposedly you can just plug your router into the ONT on a full fiber Openreach connection. So we just took the Ethernet cable from the old router and plugged it into the WAN port on the TP-Link. Then we plugged the TP-Link into power and pressed the power button on the back. The startup animation is kind of interesting, I guess, but we really don't like the status lights on this router because it's really unclear what they mean unless you go and look it up in the manual. The next step is to put in your PPPoE details on the router's admin interface. We connected to the TP-Link's Wi-Fi and then put in our local IP. If you're not sure what this is, open up a command prompt by typing CMD into your start menu, then type in ipconfig, press enter, look for this default gateway address. If you're on Mac, open the terminal and type in what you see on screen now. Then put this address into your web browser and log in using the details printed on the back of the router. Fortunately, TP-Link makes it really easy to set up what you need to do here. You start with this setup wizard, and under Internet, we chose PPPoE, set our username as bthomehub@btbroadband.com, and left our password blank. These settings here will depend on your broadband provider. The ones we've used are just for BT and EE customers, so if you're with another provider, you'll need to double check what you need to put in here. This is where everything began to go downhill. The first problem was, even with this setup, we couldn't get online at all. This took about an hour of fiddling around with, including updating router firmware and factory resetting it, and eventually we were able to connect to the internet. So replacing your router isn't just a plug and play process. You'll at the very least have to play around with these settings, maybe setting up bridge mode if your ISP router supports it, or changing PPPoE settings like we had to, and at worst, you might have to fight the router a bit to get online. like we did. The only things you can really do are firmware and resetting it. Eventually this worked for us, but it was a bit of a hassle. So once we got online, how did the TP-Link BE9300 perform compared to the EE Smart Hub Plus? We ran 3 different tests to compare these 2 routers. The first was running Ping Plotter. It's basically a program that just keeps pinging stuff to assess your latency and the consistency of your connection over a certain interval. So here we are pinging broadbandsavvy.com with the EE Smart Hub Plus over Wi-Fi. As you can see, our ping hovers around 5 milliseconds, sometimes a bit lower, sometimes a bit higher, occasionally spiking a decent bit, but pretty consistent. We're running this test a few rooms away from the router and on the second story. The router's on the ground floor, and this was with the TP-Link. The scale of this graph is a bit different. At its lowest, it's still at about 10 milliseconds. This first line is 7.5 for some reason, but it's constantly going higher, reaching 20 to 23, basically every 10 seconds or so, and occasionally spiking to 30 milliseconds, this middle line here, which we didn't see at all with the Smart Hub Plus. We couldn't actually believe it was performing this badly, in the same location with the same device, and obviously with the router installed in the same place. So we reinstalled firmware, factory reset it again, and then ran the same test. And we still got exactly the same performance. The graph scale is different again, and you can ignore all these huge spikes and the red parts when we're reconnecting to the router. But you can see the first line is 20 milliseconds. It's constantly hitting that, and pretty frequently hitting 30 as well. So the next thing we did was measure our Wi-Fi performance at the furthest point on the property from the Smart Hub Plus, and then compare that to the TP-Link, and doing all of this on a Wi-Fi 7 compatible phone. So our Smart Hub Plus is installed by the front door, and this speed test is taken at the bottom of the back garden, at the furthest point away from the router. It's a bit hard to describe, but this is at least 20 meters away from the router, and the signal is passing through 2 brick walls, as well as a heap of furniture and other stuff as well, not to mention the kitchen. So with EE's router, on their 150 megabit deal, we get about 100 megabit download speed and a 30 megabit upload speed, which is exactly what we're paying for, at the furthest point from the router. So once we plugged in the TP-Link, we did the same test, in the same location, at the bottom of the back garden, and we immediately ran into a problem. Our Wi-Fi just kept dropping off. It wasn't able to sustain it long enough for a speed test, this far away from the router, even though the Smart Hub Plus had no issues at all with this. The best we were able to do was walk about 5 or 6 meters further up the garden, back towards the house, where we were able to get this reading of about 85 megabits, still with the upload speed we're paying for, but an absolutely massive ping. Once again, we tried just about everything to fix this, including using the 5 GHz, 6 GHz, and 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi networks, trying to combine them using the setting that TP-Link gives you to switch between what it thinks is the best band. And we also tried different Wi-Fi 6 phones as well, and it was all the same. So at this point, we thought something was just completely broken with the Wi-Fi on this router, so we plugged in using an Ethernet connection. This is what we get with the EE Smart Hub Plus, basically dead on what we're paying for, with about a 9 to 10 millisecond ping, and this is the sort of thing we were seeing with the TP-Link router. The really weird thing was, it was extremely inconsistent, except for the downloads were always awful. A ping could sometimes be 10 milliseconds, but it would sometimes be like 40 over an Ethernet connection. It was only really our uploads that was somewhat normal, but they would sometimes drop down as well, and we just never really got anything close to what we're paying for with EE, with the upgraded router. And of course, if you do this, most broadband providers won't provide support if you're using a third-party router, so you won't be able to enlist their help if you run into issues like this. So what should you take out of this video? A lot of people do upgrade their routers without these sorts of issues. We know a lot of our audience has done this, so you might be watching this and thinking, we got unlucky, or we got a faulty router, or something like that. That could be the case, but we think there's something else going on with BT/EE broadband connections, or maybe Openreach in general, which affects your performance when using a third-party router. We've gone through the reviews of this router, and people who do end up having to RMA it meaning send it back to the manufacturer. They're describing different issues to what we experience. We're pretty sure this router in general is quite good. And also, the BT support forums are littered with people complaining about slower download speeds when they install their own router. We're not saying don't upgrade your router, because not everyone has issues like we had, but we would say be careful doing this, especially as an Openreach customer, and when buying broadband, don't assume that you'll always be able to upgrade the default router. So click the link in the description to our broadband deals guide, or view the other videos on our channel to get an idea of what different providers' default routers are like to use. If you've upgraded your router, let us know what this has been like in the comments below. And if you have any questions about changing your router, also let us know in the comments, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.